say you wanna watch a drama. You say you wanna watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama, or you can watch it with your daddy.
You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler, so you can come and talk around a water cooler. We're watching all day and all night.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa. Couch potatoes unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name because it's a good name, like the Green Arrow, no matter who or what bears it. At least that's our story and we're sticking to it! My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and the unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always, we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the blog or the podcast via iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, via Google Play, and now on Spotify to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including, but not limited to, Fuller House, Arrested Development, Jane the Virgin, Supernatural, Orange is the New Black, Riverdale, Gotham, and the Marvel shows on Netflix. Plus, new episodes are in the works, including revisits for Game of Thrones, Stranger Things, iZombie, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., 13 Reasons Why, The Crown, American Horror Story, Grace and Frankie, The Good Place, Altered Carbon, Doctor Who, Schitt's Creek, Westworld, and the Star Trek 50 Plus series will talk Season 2 of The Next Generation. We'll be launching new panels covering the chilling adventures of Sabrina, Charmed, Outlander, the Breaking Bad universe, This Is Us, and the Orville. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll put out some musical stops for our crazy ex-girlfriend. We'll revisit one of the all-time and most-watched classic sitcoms, MASH. We'll consider the moral implications and quick cancellation of Dollhouse. And we'll travel through time and experience all sorts of identities with Quantum Leap. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers, comedy shows, Comic-Cons, and game stores. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff, including in these quarantine times. We have and we are. So make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to the website, our YouTube channel, our Apple iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Play and now on Spotify. In the meantime, if you don't hear your show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews and we always seek new panelists. So if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of those outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback, but I didn't write a joke here. So the feedback should be about Arrow, and that's all I have to say. If you don't give us feedback, you have failed this city. Today we're around the water cooler and continuing another of CPU's podcast series. This series does not have a fixed number of episodes like other series we do. Rather, it's ongoing and covers a number of shows that fall under one large umbrella, expanding into a quite popular universe of comic book adaptations. With that said, today's episode is episode 24 of our DCTU series, in which our DCTU expert panel discusses the DC television universe, television programs adapted from DC comic properties that have morphed and expanded into one gigantic television universe. In this 24th episode of our DCTU podcast series, we return to the water cooler to talk the 8th and final season of the show that started it all, Arrow, which aired from October 15, 2019 to January 28, 2020 on the CW with a total of 10 episodes. Arrow, to remind the listener, is an American superhero television series developed by writer-producers Greg Berlanti, Mark Guggenheim, and Andrew Kreisberg. It is based on the DC Comics character Green Arrow, a costume crime fighter created by Mort Weisinger and George Papp. The series follows billionaire playboy Oliver Queen, played by Stephen Amell, who 5 years after being stranded on a hostile island returns home to fight crime and corruption as a secret vigilante whose weapon of choice is a bow and arrow. The series takes a new look at the Green Arrow character, as well as other characters from the DC Comics universe. Although Oliver Queen, the Green Arrow, had been featured in the television series Smallville from 2006 to 2011 on the CW, the producers decided to start clean and find a new actor to portray the character, hence Stephen Amell. In the 8th and final season, the Monitor, played by LaMonica Garrett, recruits Oliver to aid him him in his mission to prevent the coming crisis on infinite Earths. William, played by Ben Lewis, Connor Hawke, played by Joseph David Jones, and Mia, played by Catherine McNamara, mysteriously time travel from 2040 to the present day, Star City, and ultimately aid their fathers and the rest of Team Arrow in preparing for the crisis as well. Today, in the 24th episode of our DCTU series, our DCTU panel, namely Kyle, Hillary, Spencer, Kristen, and Nick, returns to focus specifically upon Season 8 of Arrow and to look back at Arrow as a whole now that all is said and done for the show that started the Arrowverse. Before we get into the discussion, as always, I'm going to take our typical moment to take the panel's temperature. After all, as we all know, sometimes a show can take turns for the better or the worse in our heads, or can continue its level of awesomeness or lack thereof, depending upon its story evolution. As always, it should be noted that all of our panelists have watched every single episode of Arrow and will without doubt discuss sensitive plot points from any and all 8 seasons. So for those of you who are not caught up on Arrow, or really any of the DCU to the end of January, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. Welcome back, panel. How are you?
Doing good.
Great.
We are doing awesome.
How are you ready to talk about Arrow?
Better
We
question.
are ready to talk about it.
You're
for
eager?
the podcast. Yes.
Oh boy.
Let's do it.
That's going to be exciting and loopy. Well, of course, I'm going to take your temperature along the standard CPU character question, which changes with each show we do. I have changed this last Arrow character question quite a bit because they added quite a few people in this last season for reasons that we will discuss, for better or for worse. I'm sure you'll tell me. So you get to rate your interest after watching the whole show, and specifically Season 8, and it goes like this. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Did you, or were you, watching it because you're a big Green Arrow fan from the comics, Justice League, Smallville, and or because you love your city, and because you want to be a beacon of hope, living in light and not in darkness, even though you can acknowledge that the character and the plot have been stretched somewhat thin in later seasons, you also believe the character and the man playing him was on a whole other or higher level in relation to the show itself and how the show fared over its 8 seasons, like Oliver Queen, aka the Green Arrow. Did you watch it and can't help loving it? Oh sure, it had its problems, but you can forgive its flaws because Stephen Amell as the Green Arrow makes it all worthwhile. Plus, Oliver Queen is like a father figure to you, and you were just happy to spend the time watching the show and seeing him that you did, like adult William Clayton. Did you watch it because your friends watched it and you felt they shouldn't have had to watch it alone, especially since they got you into the mess of watching it to begin with, and even though you don't always agree with your friends, like John or Diggle, aka Spartan? Did you start watching it again after having stopped briefly during Season 5, and you were surprised at how much you became invested in it? In fact, you kept hoping beyond hope that it would redeem itself before the end of the series, since everything and everyone deserves a second, or third, or fourth chance, like Earth 2 Laurel Lance, aka Black Siren. Did you watch it because you enjoyed the supporting characters most, maybe more than the original characters? You've had your differences with the Oliver Queen character, at least at times, but you do like the new team that was formed because they won you as the viewer over, like Renee Ramirez, aka Wild Dog, and or Dinah Drake, aka Black Canary III. Did you watch it, but you have conflicting feelings about it, especially given the network's attempt to launch the new, quote, Green Arrow and the Canaries spinoff? On the one hand, you feel that without Oliver Queen, the show, and therefore your Arrow-watching life would be miserable, since you resented all the storylines in which he was absent on Arrow Prime anyway, and since you couldn't help but love Arrow again when he came back because you love particularly Oliver or the Green Arrow so much. On the other hand, maybe the show went on long past its prime, and you think it's time for new blood to take on the character so that a new generation can appreciate it, like Mia Smoke, aka the new Green Arrow, so far. Did you watch it, but you started watching it too late for it to be meaningful, and the future Star City storyline actually bummed you out because of what it meant for you, even if you have a special place in your heart for the Dig character, like adult Connor Hawke? Did you watch it because that's what you do? You monitor the progress of things. You have no emotional tie to this story or this series whatsoever. You just don't want the universe to be obliterated from existence, and or you really wanted to see the episodes of Arrow only to see how they fed into Crisis on Infinite Earths, like Mar Novu, aka the Monitor, aka Mobius, aka the Anti-Monitor when he popped up? Did you watch it only to see how Arrow would handle the series finale? For one reason or another, you gave up watching by this point, at some point, like literally every good guy character or anti-hero character that has ever been on the show, or you stopped watching it, or don't watch it, or want to watch it anymore because you want to reunite with your lost loved one who, spoiler, died, and you would rather just bide your time until you can enjoy that reunion at a point of no return, quote unquote, without having to watch what's left of this show. Like Felicity Smoke, who would like to start? Don't all jump in at once!
No.
You have to talk about Arrow.
Okay, I'll start.
Okay, let's
Try
start
to be
with what your
positive.
name is.
The Monitor?
No, what's your real name?
No, I changed it.
That's a weird
That's how
name.
much I like Crisis.
False, that's live and it's already out there.
Oh, I'm Nick.
Hi, Nick.
And I guess a combination of the Monitor, because I was mostly watching it because I had to, is really why. But I did want to see how it tied into Crisis, and then, who's that other one? I did want to see how they ended it, even though...
Like every other good guy on the show that cropped up in the series finale.
Yeah, that one. Yes. So, that's where I am on this one.
Okay. Welcome back, Nick, I guess. You know, this would get done faster if you talk.
All right, I'll just go.
Okay.
So I'm Hillary.
Hi, Hillary.
Hey, I'm going to do my usual disclaimer, which is my husband will talk in a second. His name is Kyle, and you're my sister, and you're the moderator.
It's true.
And
Hashtag Hillary's
I really
disclaimer.
feel like our consistent listeners should probably know this by now, but just in case they're not consistent.
Helpful reminder.
I will say that I am partially Oliver because I am a fan of him from previous iterations and the comics, and I still like Stephen Amell. I do think that it continued to be stretched over seasons. I'm still not going to say that it was any sort of higher elevation overall in the end, but I still, as watching it in real time from the very first episode, I was always going to see it through to the end and see how they tied it in with Crisis and just how they chose to take the series in the end.
Welcome back, Hillary. It should be noted that last time Nick was John or Dig Diggle, a.k.a. Spartan, without being in a coma. That's what you said. And then last time, Hillary, you were still Oliver Queen and Dig, and then you were also Amiko Queen because you were hate watching the show.
Yeah, I mean, I've not felt positive about watching it. I get what they're trying to accomplish, but I still have some concerns about it overall.
Okay.
So that's fair. I haven't changed much. I just wanted to see where it was going to end.
Fair enough. Welcome back, Hillary, my sister.
And I am Kyle, Hillary's husband.
Hi, Kyle, Hillary's husband.
And based on these descriptions, I am the first part of the Oliver Queen description. I love Green Arrow from the comic books and Smallville. We never actually got a Green Arrow on this show. We thought he would become him. He's never became the comic book Green Arrow. So in that regard, I'm also the Monitor because I have no emotional attachment to this show. I felt nothing. I just wanted to get it over with.
Wow. Last time you were Roy Harper, a.k.a. Arsenal, only because he's your favorite character and you really had nothing else to say. Welcome back, Kyle.
Hi, I'm Spencer the Token Brit.
Hi, Spencer the Token Brit.
I will say that I was mostly Oliver, but very similar to Kyle, that by the end it was just, please let it be over. Yeah, it didn't really redeem itself at all, but I still have a love for the character, and everything that this show spawned and gave us outside of it gives it some redemption for me.
Last time you were quarantined in a bunker across the city, if you recall, not due to coronavirus.
Deja vu.
Yeah.
He started it.
And you were mostly Dig with a sprinkling of Green Arrow.
He's just like, whatever.
Welcome back, Spencer the Token Brit. Till we
Thank
find
you.
another one, I guess.
I'm Kristen.
Hi, Kristen.
Hi. So, Kylie, I'll save you a second. And so last time I was Dig, Earth 2 Laurel, and Curtis, aka Mr. Terrific. And that hasn't changed much. I'm still Dig because I watch it because we all watch it together. I'm still Earth 2 Laurel because I wanted it to redeem itself. And this time I am like literally every good guy character or anti-hero character that has ever been on the show. I watched it to only see how it would handle the series finale. I powered through this long. I was going to see it through till the end. Meh.
All right. Welcome back, Kristen. And of course, my name is Kylie. I both moderate and participate on this, one of our spiciest panels. Last time I was still the Green Arrow because Stephen Amell, hearts, and Black Siren because I wanted it to be redeemed. I am still going to remain... I'm still going to remain Green Arrow because Stephen Amell, hearts. And I wrote the part about him being on another level. It's him being on another level, not the show being on another level. I think him and the show were not matched well. And that kind of feeds into some of the other comments that have already been made. This isn't the Green Arrow that most people who know the Green Arrow are used to. And I think he had the capacity to be that Green Arrow when they started him off as the Playboy Oliver Queen. There were glimpses and hints that maybe he could have done it, but they didn't take it down that road. And so really I was mostly watching for him. When he was on the screen, it was great. When he was not, it was not so great. And then I would also be the Monitor because I knew they were feeding this season as a setup to the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and I wanted to see how that would go. And I guess I'd add the every good guy character too, because I am a completionist and I always want to see what the series finale will do and how satisfying that will be. And that's what we're going to talk about today, as far as whether or not it was satisfying in the end. Of course, if you've never liked the show, I don't know what your measurement is. You get to talk about that. Let's do so. What did you think? So there's 10 episodes. It was given a shortened season, a shortened last season. It ended in January, a couple of weeks after the end of Crisis on Infinite Earths. What did you think of Season 8? What did you like? What didn't you like? I have no idea what you're going to say, so start wherever you feel comfortable.
To me, this season encapsulates the main problem I had with the entire run of Arrow, in that it focuses on way too many characters who are not actually Green Arrow. The Team Flash dynamic works really good with Flash, and it works great on that show. But I don't think they ever should have had this many supporting characters for Arrow. I think they really should have focused on Oliver and Dig like the first two seasons. But they were really trying to capture that lightning in a bottle from Flash, and they just kept rotating, and they wanted to flesh out this world. But it just really should have been focused on him. Stephen Amell is the best actor out of the bunch. But because they were focused on so many other people, nothing really felt special about Green Arrow. There was all these other people who could fight just as well as him and do the things he could do. So he never really shined as much as he should have.
He also had terrible villains.
Not true. No.
One of the biggest problems that this show faced with hindsight is the fact that they made it a little darker and more serious. It almost felt like they were trying to have Green Arrow be more of a Batman character than a Green Arrow character. The Green Arrow in the comic books, the Green Arrow in the cartoon series was a lot more fun. And no offense to Stephen Amell, but his character was just too dark in relation. And I think that really, at first I liked it, but as we got deeper and deeper, it just lost so much steam.
Yeah, for the development of his character, like in the beginning, I still feel that the first couple of seasons are by far the strongest, and the rest of it just kind of, it just teeters and totters out of trying to find itself, and it never really does. And I do agree that they were kind of starting off with that tone, that similar tone, which is totally fine, but it never really found its footing. It just stayed on the same course and the same path. And I don't know what causes that. If it's just, again, people who are unfamiliar with the material, or people who are trying to serve whatever studios say they can and can't do. It's probably just everything mixed together, because we've talked about this before on our other episodes of Arrow, but I think that it struggles a lot from not developing even Oliver himself sometimes. In many ways, he doesn't really see that much development from the beginning. They're trying to make it seem like he has, and in certain ways he has. But I felt like it was more regurgitation of what we had already seen many, many, many times. And it just still doesn't fit an overall narrative or arc. It just is basically the same thing repeated. And in these particular episodes, again, I kind of hit it on this with Crisis. You know, a lot of these stories, I've talked about DC and Marvel, they interchange, they borrow from each other. But in terms of the adaptations, Marvel's come first. So even with this last season, it was very derivative of what happened with the Endgame movie, where it was just Oliver, again, referencing back to all of the things that had already happened. Well, that was a big narrative for Endgame. It even threw in a lot of Nolan feels, like the Batman Nolan movies. Even at the end with like the statue reference and everything like that. It is basically the Dark Knight Rises movie. So I feel
everything but Green Arrow comics is what they drew from.
Yes, everything but actual Arrow storylines and characteristics and all of that jazz. So I think that's where a lot of the flaws came in and where they pretty much stayed. Again, if they had just drew from actual Oliver Queen stories, it probably could have been more successful in the end.
To piggyback off that, not knowing much about the Green Arrow and if it should be light or a team or what, if they did some of that better, it wouldn't bother me because I don't know the other stuff. So if they had stuck to a team and written a team dynamic well, it would have been a more enjoyable show. So to me, they not only veered from what Green Arrow is, but then they still kind of failed at creating a dynamic, well-told story, whether it's Arrow or not. Because I don't care who the team is. There's too many team members to list.
No, that's true. That's true. It's not a, yeah.
The funny thing is, like, if you took this last season and showed it to somebody 10 years ago who was obsessed with Green Arrow comics, they would think it's insane. How much stuff there's characters who never existed, storylines that never existed. And meanwhile, like, the writers of The Flash, they follow the comics like a Bible. Like, they adhere to it perfectly. So it's like, it's timeless. The stories are timeless. And this, it's like they think they're, same with Gotham, where you think the writers think they know better than the source material. And it deviated way too far from what I love about Green Arrow.
So there's a lot of general commentary, except for what Kyle just said. I think what I want to do is focus in a little bit on Season 8 before we go to the broader hindsight, looking back perspective. And what I will say is that even though I did not love this season per se, I thought it was better than the last couple. There were only 10 episodes. I mean, that's not a high bar, so I don't know why you're giving me a look, but it was only 10 episodes, and I did not like the future. I did not like the trip into the future. I did not like the second generation coming back through time piece of it. I know that this was all basically a feeder for the Green Arrow and the Canaries backdoor pilot, which was episode 9, and for Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was episode 8 of these 10 episodes. And it felt the story itself, even though I didn't hate it, I also didn't like it because it didn't really service the character at all. It didn't service Green Arrow at all. It was fun to kind of do the greatest hits piece of it, although it's a shame that they didn't get Manu Bennett back, because they got everybody else back, but they didn't get him back. And he's from the 2 best seasons of the show that Hillary already identified, which are the first 2 seasons. The Deathstroke seasons were the best seasons, but he wasn't back.
Believable villain.
Yeah, exactly. Deathstroke, not typically a Green Arrow villain, but they had a great chemistry, and it was really...
They built a really good backstory between the two, so you actually cared.
Exactly. And the fact that they didn't have him somewhere in these 10 episodes made me a little bit sad. But I did enjoy how they kind of hit on the different places he's been, and that they did bring back some of the people who'd left the show. Like, I'm glad that he had a moment with Thea, for example. Even though nobody really loves Thea, it would be really super sad if she was out there and she never came back and they didn't have their goodbye scene. That kind of stuff. But all in all, it was very much anticlimactic, sort of, not really doing anything for the Green Arrow character. And that's maybe the bigger disappointment of all of it. Except for the finale, but we'll talk about that in a second.
I mean, I agree, like, all the future stuff ends up being pointless anyway, because it gets erased. And when you're watching it, you think, okay, well, he's doing all the stuff for the Monitor, so it's going to tie into Crisis. But when you watch Crisis, none of the stuff you're seeing him do for the Monitor matters at all.
No.
Right. It was all just filler.
Exactly.
It was just filler. As I said, they're just following the same beats of the Infinity War and Endgame movies because he time traveled. It allows him to go back and, like you said, step back to his greatest hits through the other seasons. That's basically what the Endgame movie did. I'm not saying it's wrong for them to do that, but if they are going to do it and do it so noticeably, they should try to do a good job of it. And as we're all basically saying, it was already hard for us to have the same emotional investment because it just wasn't consistently strong throughout the years, unfortunately. Because like I said, I have a lot of dedication to the character. So does Kyle, as he just very passionately talked about. It just didn't have the same impact. And even like Nick said, he's not even as familiar, but if he could just watch it from an enjoyable level, it would be something, but it just never reached that.
It's tough when any show does like, we're going to spend an arc that when it's over, it doesn't really matter. And that they did this for the last season where the future stuff doesn't matter. That really made me care even less about it. Cause I kept thinking that almost every episode, well, is this even going to matter? Cause once they pulled them into the present, it was going to change things anyway. And then Crisis definitely changed it all. And then we're probably not talking about it yet, but the backdoor pilot has me confused as well with how it fits in. The one thing that does tie into Crisis is that Diggo's wife, what's her name? Lila becomes, I don't know any names.
You're so uninvested, you don't even remember.
Becomes Harbinger in the Crisis?
Harbinger? Yeah, so she becomes Harbinger during this, but we don't really get much of that anyway. It just happens. So the one thing that would maybe help prepare you for Crisis, they don't really tell the story of it. She just needs to. He was convincing.
On the positive side of things, one thing that I did like about these episodes was, and I think we talked about it in previous episodes, how we just really missed Oliver just kind of being awesome and the action sequences and the fighting and him pulling off those stunts. I mean, I think this is probably the most he's done that in a while. And he did a lot of it on his own. And those sequences were just awesome to watch. I think they did a really good job of choreographing all of that and showing off Stephen Amell's skills that way. I enjoyed all of that. Those are probably the highlight points for me in those episodes, was watching those sequences. Because if you're if you're into the genre, that's something you just want to sign up for anyway. So.
And I still maintain that the fight choreography on this show is the best of all of the Arrowverse so far.
Well, I mean, it kind of should be.
Yeah, it definitely is.
It's a bar they're going to have to live up to in some of the other ones. Because some of the other ones, I'm not saying which ones yet, Batwoman, need to live up to this standard given the story that they're trying to tell. And that's
the most recent episode that I watched of Batwoman, they did a pretty good job on the fight sequences.
Are you caught up?
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm just past the Crisis, so
okay.
So far, not impressed. So
I think what they've done is just turn the lighting down so it seems a bit more realistic.
Oh, good. Kristen, you've been quiet. Any additions or subtractions to what's been said?
No, that's why I've been quiet. Everybody else has very eloquently articulated my feelings about how this whole thing was, especially, not just this last season, but the past couple of seasons. I agree. I think there might like maybe 5% chance might be some promise if Green Arrow and the Canaries is greenlit for CW.
So, predominantly speaking, what you're telling me is none of you really liked this season. None of you.
It didn't do justice to the send-off for the character the way it should have done. It felt rushed in parts. It felt disjointed in other parts. It just wasn't good television.
It really honestly felt to me like watching some sort of comic book soap opera.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, if you enjoy it, that's fine. I mean, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but honestly, like, even at the very least, Nick and Kristen are less familiar. They say it every episode, and they are still struggling with the overall, like, attachment to the characters, the development, and the overall story. And then if you are more familiar with it, it's just really hard to adjust to everything. It just keeps, I think I already said it just keeps regurgitating the same points. It never really, I can't even articulate it anymore. I'm just speaking in circles. It never really gets to that point that you needed to have that final, like, there's so many other shows out there that you feel, oh my gosh, I'm satisfied. This ended the way that it should. Even if it never did change tones, which we all talked about, we hoped that it would, but I even felt like a lot of the scenes between, like, him and Mia, like, again, he did a fine job acting it, but they were just, that is the feeling they left with me, very soap opera-esque.
Well, I never liked her, to be quite honest. I don't know if it's the actress or the storyline itself or all of the above, but I never liked her. Even when they introduced her last season, I had absolutely no sympathy or interest in Mia as an adult. And so to have her come back, and they're trying to force these emotional beats between her and her dad. And at first, when they made the jokes about, like, yeah, she's definitely your daughter, I was like, haha, that's funny because it's true. But then they kept doing it. And that joke got old. Yeah. So it stopped being funny. And then all of the things that you say soap opera, but I don't know that I felt soap opera, but I get why you say that. It did feel forced. It just felt there was no emotional depth to it because we had not spent a long enough time with this character, and she wasn't very likable when she first was introduced.
One of the problems I had with the Mia character is that she was supposed to be an adult, but she felt like a
spoiled
petulant young teen.
Mm-hmm.
That confused me too. I was like, how old is this chick? Because she's acting way younger than she looks.
Well, they kept being like, oh yeah, like, yeah, she's awesome because she had awesome parents. But I'm like, okay, so are you saying that her being kind of whiny and annoying is awesome, and thus Oliver and Felicity were whiny and annoying? Oh yeah, sometimes they kind of were.
Well, but I on the flip side, I enjoyed adult William. Ben is his real name. I thought he was nice, and he did have that emotional connection because we spent time with his younger version in previous seasons. So him coming back in time felt like a true Marty McFly moment that didn't lack that emotional punch, I guess is where I'm going. But they weren't setting him up for, if they run this show, he'll probably be a supporting character, but they weren't actually setting him up for anything more, so it didn't feel like it was forced when he appeared. Now, granted, none of it will matter in the end because crisis and reboot and blah, 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 but at least I felt those moments were earned, unlike the moments between Mia and Oliver.
The actress who plays Felicity is 24, and physically
real?
She looks every bit of that, but the character was played much more like a 13 or 14-year-old with the attitudes, etc.
You meant Mia,
You mean
right?
Mia?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Because I was like, Felicity's not 24.
No, the girl who played Mia.
Yeah. I think she was supposed to be late teens, early 20s, but they never really explained that. But she acted much younger.
Too much teenage angst written into the character.
Too much angst about, well, you chose to be a hero and you didn't raise me. Like, okay.
Well, here's the problem. Her character doesn't exist in the comics. It's his son, Connor Hawke, who is angsty like that and angry because he spent his entire life not knowing his father. And so it makes sense. But with all these changes they've made to the story, none of it makes sense. None of it fits, but they're still trying to fit her into the Connor Hawke mold, even though she hasn't had the life he has or any of the experience that he has in the comics.
That was another problem with this series as a general rule. People would become heroes after about 8 seconds of training.
Yeah, like Laura
always
was a boxing trainer for a week, and then she's all of a sudden on the streets fighting crime.
Yeah.
But Earth 2 Laurel
All
Lance
games
is much more interesting. Wouldn't you agree? Black Siren's Laurel Lance?
Yeah.
Black Siren was probably the high point in all of her iterations, but it's too little too late, and there's been too many versions, and they didn't do any of the other versions right. I've talked about that in previous episodes. Again, I'm a big Black Canary fan. Many times and like I said, I'm fine with, like, you know, it doesn't have to be spot on, but if it wasn't so zigzaggy all the time, and she wasn't, I mean, things get rebooted in comics too, but when it's done inconsistently through the show and inconsistently with the narrative, it just takes away from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's telling that Sarah Lance ended up being the most interesting of those characters. Even when she first showed up, when she was being Canary, and her outfit and everything was more comic book accurate than any of the following Canaries.
Okay.
No one knows to say to that.
I never had any connection to the Black Canary characters, which is sad because she should be 50% of the Green Arrow equation.
Agreed.
It's always
or at least gotten there.
Yeah.
In later seasons, they could have gotten it to that place, but they went a whole different direction. Yes, for the Olicity thing, but even still, the way that they chose to go about, like I just said, the Canary iterations was just meh. As Kristen keeps saying, meh.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add. I mean, I've said that before. I've been a little bit miffed with how they've handled the Black Canary lexicon in this show, and I don't think that's ever changed for me. But I do
like, and like you were saying, I do like the Earth 2 Laurel better, but at that point it just felt like an overcorrection because they realized they made such a big mistake, and then at that point it just felt desperate.
Wow.
But Katie Cassidy is more enjoyable in these final episodes. She's another one of the high points.
She's got a nice haircut. I kept admiring
She got
her
a nice haircut, and she got the redemption that she was looking for, and I mean, that was kind of interesting to watch.
The episode where her and Oliver had to try to save Quentin or accept his fate.
Yeah. Yeah, it is basically.
It's the Groundhog Day episode.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah. But it was nice to see Paul Blackthorne again, I thought. And then he ended up coming back.
I enjoyed seeing Tommy Merlin again. I enjoyed seeing Paul Blackthorne again. There were a few moments that were enjoyable, but they were few and far between.
Wow.
And you have to feel kind of bad for Earth 1 Laurel when Oliver reboots literally everybody else he knows, but he left her dead.
That's my question. Why? Just because they wanted to not undercorrect?
Well, what happened to Earth 2 in the reboot? Like, is there an Earth 2?
No answer unless we're willing to spoil what happens
Well,
after
I mean, if
Crisis.
you watch Flash, I'm pretty sure that Harry Wells is still dead, so I'm guessing Earth 2 is still wiped out.
The original Earth 2.
Yeah.
Because the multiverse is sprouting again. Yeah. They're going to have to do a lot. Yeah, they took on Crisis on Infinite Earths, and they're going to have to explain stuff now. They have to explain it. And all the shows.
I just don't think they have to. I mean, they never did really with Flashpoint.
Well, they're going to have to. This is inescapable and unexcusable if they don't this time. Especially
they
because...
explained Flashpoint by saying it didn't matter because Crisis happened.
Right, and then they'll just do the same thing to Crisis.
Look, I'm choosing to remain optimistic.
In this world too, and that's the extent of it.
What did you say, Kyle?
Now we've got Black Lightning as well.
Yeah.
What did you say, Kyle?
That the extent of it will just be that they're all on the same Earth, Supergirl and Black Lightning. And then all the other changes, I'm sure, won't ever get mentioned again.
Well, unless they want to bring Jesse Quick back, which I don't know if they do.
Her show got canceled.
Right, but if she was on Earth 2 and it's gone, they either can't bring her back or they have to explain what happened.
I mean, they don't usually explain things. They can probably just stick her in.
Well, if you're listening, Arrowverse producers, which I hope you might be at some time, you cannot escape. You did the Crisis on Infinite Earths. You cannot, and you changed it, so you cannot escape how it affects things. I would become very disgruntled with all the shows if this weren't the case. So, with Arrow, I don't care either way. It ended. But with Flash and all the other ones, I would be very, very upset if there isn't an explanation somewhere along the way. Where appropriate. Don't ham-fist it in there. That would be sad. I just want to hit on a few things, and then, since you're all talking very generally, I think we can speed toward the series finale. The main thrust of Season 8 is that he has to fulfill these errands for the Monitor, which, as a couple have already mentioned, never really matters in the end, because those things never come to bear in Crisis on Infinite Earths. We also have the Next Generation coming back in time, again, for no reason that we can ascertain, except that Mia is there for the Crisis on Infinite Earths. That's all I got. So by the end of the whole thing, we've seen a lot of characters come back. We've seen flashbacks to things. Episode 9. Let's talk about Episode 9, the actual backdoor pilot for Green Arrow and the Canaries. What did you think of it? This is where you get to say things.
So Dinah just woke up in the future?
Who?
Dinah just woke up in the future?
Apparently, having never existed somehow in the timeline. Although she appears in the series finale, I don't understand how Episode 9 and Episode 10 relate at all.
I just think they filmed a pilot and squeezed it in there. Like, we have to fit this in somewhere. It doesn't really make sense, but okay.
And it wasn't even interesting.
No.
Well, yeah, this is a really bad equivalent, but way back when, because I stopped watching Grey's Anatomy after like the first couple seasons, but then they put in like that private practice, and they just tried really hard just to add that sideshow.
Private Practice, I actually watched the whole thing, and it was pretty good. It lasted for 5 seasons.
Referring to it, like you're watching Grey's Anatomy, and then you hit that Private Practice episode.
In the
like, the actual pilot.
Like how it messes with the flow. You're all of a sudden thrown into this completely different cast.
Yeah. What's her name? Kate Walsh. She's fine and all that jazz. I'm just saying in general that it just, when you're watching Grey's Anatomy, it does feel a little disjointed. I mean, they tried their best, but like in this, it really just feels extra disjointed because it was kind of already wishy-washy as a whole season anyway.
Yeah, like if you try to make it work, it either needs to take place after the finale, but it really needs to take place after Crisis because that's where Dinah would have appeared. Like maybe Oliver put her in the future to help Mia, but her being in the finale, like nothing's... It just confused me.
She should not have been in the finale, bottom line, and neither should have Laurel or Mia. I mean, I guess if Sarah wanted to go get them and bring them back...
It's going to be a loop. You're going to have to watch the entire show of Green Arrow and the Canaries, and then they'll have to explain how they had to go back in time in order to make it back in time for his funeral.
But isn't that what Sarah did? Didn't Sarah go pick up Mia and bring her? Yes.
She went into the future and brought her back, yes.
But no one should have known who Dinah was.
According to Dinah, she can find no evidence that she has existed on this or any other Earth when she wakes up in future Star City. I don't have any explanation. That's just what she says.
I feel like they think...
She just probably did a quick Google search and was like, uh-oh, there's no results.
It's sad because I like her character, even though they probably should have started with her and not made her the third or fourth in a long line of Black Canaries. But yeah, I have no understanding of how that fits, and I think Spencer said it, the show itself was actually very bland. Like, I have no interest in coming on the ride with Mia as the Green Arrow or these two as Canaries.
I mean, she is just not a lead actress for me.
I don't like her.
It just felt like a teenager version of the soap opera, and
starting her off as a socialite
It's just
I don't like her. I was gonna say I do not like her,
which is fine. I mean, it just feels very. I don't know. It just feels very CW after school, especially.
It seems to be stepping more in the direction of like a Riverdale or a Nancy Drew, or away from more interesting fare.
Which would, again, might be okay, but they have to do it strong and with some strong material and still somewhat make it, like, relatable to its fan base. I mean, because there will still be people who watch it who have no idea what they're watching it. They're just watching it because to them it seems interesting, but they don't have...
I just hope they kind of separate it from the rest of the Arrowverse, because I really don't want to watch it.
I don't think they're going to.
Well, honestly, to be fair, it has not been ordered to series yet. That was just the pilot. So
that's what I was saying. There's been no announcement, and part of me thinks it has to do with the failure of the Birds of Prey movie. I mean, I guarantee Warner Brothers is having doubts about the strength of this show after that bombed.
Well, and after the strength of... the quality of this episode was even lesser than the quality of the Arrow episodes preceding it. Like, I thought to myself, what the hell is this? It's not good.
Nope.
Everybody agrees because they're science.
Yep.
Yeah, I wasn't engaged during that episode.
No,
The best thing I could say about it is it was bland.
it's bland. Agreed.
Until I read the summary that came in the email, I had forgotten most of this season as a whole.
I would agree with that. Me too.
And I've watched it recently, and I also, things don't stick. The finale doesn't stick because I remember more of Crisis as the finale for the Arrow.
Yeah. In fact, it was a better finale for Arrow than Arrow was, and it wasn't good.
So let's talk about the
perfect, Spencer.
Let's talk about the finale, since that's what we were not just talking about, but what you wanted to talk about. It starts off with a handful of flashbacks. You see the flashback to his first year when he's first teamed up with Dig. You see a flashback to when Oliver is stopping Slade Wilson from killing somebody's mom. You see Sarah invite Mia back. And then there's this whole plot around the kidnapping of younger William and all of the different Arrow sidekicks / teammates / I guess partners in the Justice League or the Super Friends, whatever you want to call it. They all kind of descend onto Star City to help resolve this kidnapping, although none of them really helps with it. And then they have this huge memorial for Oliver because he's still dead. He does not come back to life after the Crisis on Infinite Earths. So this is really a long, protracted goodbye and is the third of, or the fourth of the many memorials that he receives, starting with Crisis on Infinite Earths and the Super Friends, and then proceeding as such. So what did you think of this series finale in the end? Also, I should mention one little moment, which is Dig in the last few minutes witnesses a meteor crash and finds a box containing an object emitting a green light. Dun dun dun.
That was fun.
Yeah. It was a fun joke on the hints that he's John Stewart, the third Green Lantern, which was fun. And confirmation for all the people who had those little theories ever since he was first introduced.
That's a spinoff I'd watch. If they showed a Green Lantern spinoff with him as the Green Lantern, I'd watch that.
Yeah, but knowing these writers, it was probably kryptonite in there.
Is that what you thought? Okay. Because that'd be
funny.
Sad. It's not kryptonite there. But she's on the Earth now.
Yeah. The memorial was sweet and everything, but I don't even think they were being subtle about, again, I said it earlier, homaging the Nolan movies, because it's like beat for beat, exactly like The Dark Knight Rises. Those last few scenes. So, I mean, if you had an emotional connection to it, that's fine. I think they were, but that's what I'm saying, they're just trying so much to be derivative. I think they were actually purposely trying to be derivative of it, which is fine, but I just wish they would be a little more original sometimes and still put in those moments like the Jon Stewart moment, because it just feels like it's already been done and not very long ago. It just takes away from a nice send-off for Stephen Amell. It was, like I said, it was still sweet, but I mean, there are some shows where I like lose myself, what like I completely feel sad when it's done, and I just didn't have it for this, unfortunately.
Not at all.
It also raised some moral questions about Oliver can recreate this entire world. He can change anything he wants, but he only brings back the people he knew. Like, sorry, Barry, your parents didn't deserve to come back after all the crap they went through. Just like 4 or 5 people I know.
I have no answer to that because that's a bummer, but I will say that this series, I did shed a few tears in the series finale because I do think there were some beats that appealed to the nostalgia of it. It was nice to see all the faces. I enjoyed a couple of the moments, like for the first time we saw Nyssa and Talia al Ghul together. They were fun because that's a missed opportunity. They should have tried that earlier. And there were a couple other moments like that. And Felicity coming back, we have to mention that Emily Bett-Ricard's came back to be Felicity as a live person and then as not such an alive person by the end. And it was nice to see her again. I'm glad that they saved her for the finale. I did not miss her until she came back, and then she did come back, and I thought, well, this is nice. This was a good way to use that character and how she exited. You know, Arrow is not something that I probably will revisit very much, but at least at the last, they did an appropriate, I guess, send-off for Steven. He did start the whole, I mean, not single-handedly, but he's the reason why we're doing this, in essence, and the reason why all these other shows exist, for better or for worse. So
I mean, I might go back and watch seasons 1 and 2 at some point in time, but I wouldn't go beyond that.
I don't
Honestly,
know that I would
though,
do
like,
that.
if you watch the first 2 seasons and, like, him meeting Slade and all that, and then him defeating Slade, it feels like it has a complete arc.
Yeah.
And they just had no idea what to do after they did that, because they very clearly set up from the start that was going to be the important relationship.
Well, a lot of that, though, came down to Warner Brothers pulling the plug on some of the characters. And I think that's really where this show suffered the most, is the damage from the studio as opposed to... I think they probably had some much stronger storylines than we ended up with. But once derailed by the studio, it was very difficult for them to ever get back on task.
That is the reason why we had a longer time at Namda Parbat, or however you say that, in the 3rd season with Ra's al Ghul. Because they were trying to...
just ordered a curry.
What?
Nothing. Bad joke.
I can't say the name. And I also think that, well, if you recall, we actually spent a lot of time, Kristen and Nick won't recall this because they weren't on the panel yet, in our season 3 and 4 episode when we were going over that, we talked at length about how they were setting up the Suicide Squad just in time for them to release the Suicide Squad movie and pull the plug on all of that. That could have been a very interesting direction for the show and introduced a lot of interesting characters. But I'm
so glad that they did that and gave us that phenomenal pile of garbage movie.
What about the sequel to it?
I don't even see how that got greenlit after the first one.
Oh no, there's a sequel?
Yes.
It's the guy that made Guardians of the Galaxy, though, so it'll probably be a lot better. And he recast everybody except for Harley Quinn.
I was going to say, the sad thing is the Birds of Prey movie, which they should never have called it that. They should have just called it the Harley, because it was really about Harley. That was actually enjoyable.
I've heard that.
It
didn't do well
at all. It doesn't take itself seriously, and the action is amazing.
And Margot Robbie was really the driving creative force behind that. So, again, disregarding a lot of what their inputs on it is what probably caused it to not do well.
It just goes back to as we always talk about in these panels, inevitably, is Warner Brothers mismanagement. They have all these great properties and amazing characters, and they almost purposefully run them into the ground. Like, they take creative
I don't even
control.
think they know they're doing it.
They don't. It's movies by committee instead of by a creative force with a vision.
Give somebody the keys to the car and let them drive.
Yeah, if they just let him again become Oliver Queen and then follow some storylines consistently that are strong around his character the way that it should have, it could have been a whole different show. And that's where I thought it was. I mean, because again, we watched it from the very first time the first episode aired, so we do have a lot of respect for it starting the DC TV universe. But then at the same time, overall, the DC TV universe has not been very strong. So I mean, I always have conflicted feelings about all of that, and it still could have been course corrected even if they were going towards a certain thing. They had opportunities to course correct. They just did it kind of wonky. And they didn't actually course correct.
They
For
changed
me, the only
course.
show in the DCTU right now that is any good is Legends of Tomorrow. The others have all just lost their way.
Really?
Agreed.
Except for the Swamp Thing.
I mean, it was canceled, so it lost its way, too.
I haven't watched any of Post-Crisis Flash, so I don't know that I can offer that opinion. But we will talk about all of the different DC television shows when we do our summer review series of each of the constituent shows, including a catch-up series on Black Lightning, now that it's been folded into the Arrowverse as of Crisis on Infinite Earths. So I'm going to quickly review some predictions you all made in the last episode. So one of the big things we talked about last time was how there was a prediction that I kind of led with, actually, that Season 8 would be used as a setup for Crisis. And there was a lot of I don't want that to happen kind of reaction, but then that's exactly what happened. So was that good for you, or did you want them to do something else?
We already said it, and I think we also said it in that last episode, which is the reason we didn't want to do it, is because it would take away from Oliver's ending, and that's exactly what it did. So we were right.
Nick predicted that the last episodes would be filler, and Kristen predicted that the younger generation characters would influence Crisis and would not be all filler. Kristen was actually more correct because they did have kind of a purpose.
They didn't fill anything in Crisis. She stood around in the background.
But she was there.
She got the Green Arrow hood.
They would be there.
She shot the Shadow Demons. Okay.
Shadow demons that disappeared when anyone punched one.
They tapped them.
Shadow demons ever.
If you threw a handful of rocks in the air, you could have eliminated 20 of them.
But even better, you can Care Bear stare at your main villain and poof!
I want to, just because this is a podcast, I want to paint this picture. We're in quarantine and we're socially distant. I made my remark and every other panelist looked at me like I was nuts, and then you all launched in at the same time. If only we were broadcasting this one.
I think everyone can relate to having quarantine brains to some degree, but...
I'm just saying, the visual of this, as we zoom this, was hilarious. Kristen also predicted, possibly based on spoilers she saw, that Oliver would encounter Malcolm and Tommy Merlin and Moira Queen on the other Earths he was supposed to save. Except that he didn't save that Earth.
He didn't save that Earth. That was actually another high point. I like seeing those cameos in that episode just because I like John Barrowman and yes, it was still refreshing to see them again. If they had just been there for more consistent storylines in earlier seasons, like when I didn't care about all the Russia stuff and all that other stuff.
They should never have killed off Malcolm or Tommy.
No, that
Personal
was a
opinion.
huge
big mistake.
That was a huge letdown for the long run. Especially
since those characters, or at least by virtue of the Dark Archer, etc., are actually Green Arrow villains. As opposed to
what do you always say, Spencer?
Yeah.
Okay. I predicted we would not see as much of Star City Earth 1. That wasn't true. They left for a little while, but they came back. Well, we already talked about the greatest hits concept. Spencer predicted that we would see flash forwards, but ones that would be affected and or would influence Crisis. That was sort of true and sort of not. How did you feel about the resolution of the future Star City story angle with the kids being shuttled back, other than the fact that it didn't matter to Crisis? Did you like...
It didn't matter at all. They completely rebooted that future.
It's like, here's a story that has no bearing on anything. Enjoy. No, I didn't enjoy that either. You just aren't doing it right anymore. So it's good that it's over.
I mean, maybe people that don't notice things not having continuity really enjoy it, but we tend to notice lack of continuity. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like storylines to matter.
Yeah, and if there's no stakes in the end, you have no reason to rewatch it, and you know it's just filler.
There's never any point in putting something in a script if it doesn't have some sort of bearing on the overarching storyline. And this entire season was stuffed full of things that didn't have major impact in anything.
Yeah.
Kristen's just nodding.
I'm just like, yep.
Hilariously, Kyle jokingly, although it turned out to be less of a joke, predicted that JJ would be changed back to Sarah after Crisis, except now that they both exist. So,
I knew that was going to be the most important plot hole for them, and that somehow they would go back to it, because they had to completely undo Flashpoint.
And we've already ranted about that in our Crisis on Infinite Earths episode live. It's on Facebook and wherever you get your podcasts. And then I predicted we would see Connor, not JJ. That's incorrect. They made JJ in the future Deathstroke, the head of the Deathstroke gang. Did you care about that at all? Connor was an agent of the future Argus equivalent. No, they're all shaking their heads.
The only way I'd want to see Connor is if he was the actual second Green Arrow and comic after it. And nobody cares about JJ or this Deathstroke gang they came up with.
Yeah, Deathstroke having it. That just doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. I just feel like Batman did the whole, we're all Jokers in the future as the Joker gang, and now that's what everyone who's trying to make anything comic booky.
Exactly. Like, Deathstroke is like the biggest loner mercenary in the world. Like, he does not fit a criminal underground gang. But yeah, it's exactly. It's like they're ripping off Batman Beyond, but they're like, which villain's name do we use instead of Joker?
It just wasn't interesting. There was.
So compare this season to other seasons. Was it more, less, or equally successful? Why or why not?
I mean, I still think it was probably better than the Adrian Chase season.
Yes. I agree. Season 5 was the low point.
But then, honestly, infomercials after midnight are better than the Adrian Chase
I'll
season.
remember more about this than I do the Adrian Chase season of Arrow. If anybody asked, like, quoted episodes from that, I completely pushed them out of my brain.
They're repressed.
To me, season 5 is the worst season of the show, hands down.
Yeah, by far.
Yep.
Let's see. We've already talked about how the writers did not correct for prior ills. So what I'd like you to do at this point, we'll bypass the missed villain opportunities because unless you want to talk about it again, but you kind of already hit on it, grade Arrow at the end or assign it one of the star rankings in the star business. I can repeat what each of them mean if you need that. I wasn't planning on it. We did this at the end of Gotham's series as well because the progress of our Gotham panel is everybody but Krista on this panel. And the same progress of dialogue and discussion about that show has kind of transplanted onto this show, except that Gotham, as Hillary said earlier, was far crazier in the end. So what I'm asking you to do is, now that you've seen all 8 seasons of Arrow, how would you grade it, and or how would you rank it 5 stars to 1 star, with 5 being the best, 1 being the worst? Everybody must answer. Go.
As a whole?
As a whole.
As a whole, the 8 seasons, I would say 2.5 stars. I want to give it more for what it gave us, spawning the other shows, the first 2 seasons being really good, but after the first 2 seasons, it just took a downward dive and never really recovered.
Yeah.
So 2.5 might be generous.
Ooh.
I was going to say 1.5 because you have 2 great seasons and 6
Kylie.
No, 6 terrible seasons.
Because she's
2,
got love goggles on.
She loves Stephen Amell. But as a comic book fan, it's a terrible good
TV fan.
That's between chances are you're mainly bored and pass on this one, guys.
Honestly, 6 bad seasons, I would never suggest anybody watch 6 bad seasons of anything, especially when they're long seasons. And especially if they're a comic book fan, I would just give them stacks of Green Arrow comic books, or say watch the Justice League cartoon.
Or Smallville.
Or Smallville seasons like 7 through the final season. All 6. Better, more concise, no filler.
If this is copywritten, I can't use it.
Oh, he's doing the
You're
same.
not doing a video anyway.
Woo!
That was for you, Kylie.
Hearts, hearts, hearts. Yeah, they never brought back the salmon ladder.
For the salmon ladder.
They put dig on it. That's not the same.
So yeah, if we're talking about the first and second seasons, I would give it like a 4.5. If we are talking about the rest of it, I would probably give it a 2.5.
But when you put that together, what does that
I don't
mean?
want to put it together because I feel like it's 2 totally separate entities. Like they don't even feel like the same thing. I guess still like a what is this? Okay, it's definitely not 5 or 4. What's 3?
Wow.
3 is things you like, things you don't like.
Yeah, so it's still mostly 2.5, but I really want to give credit to season 1 and 2 because they're good. Even though they're not still very Green Arrow-y, but it's still a good show for the first couple seasons. And it's when he's Arrow the most. He's more like the Arrow in the beginning than in the end. I don't know how that happens, but that's what happened.
I really want to know what I rated Gotham. I can't remember.
Everybody was like below a 1 star, and I think I gave it a 1.5, and you all plotzed. That's basically the discussion. Everybody,
man.
Spencer started the trend of going below 1, which is not actually a legal move. So,
I'm a lawbreaker.
2?
because chances are you were mainly bored, but there was some fascination that held it together.
Yeah, I mean, I was mainly bored, especially after season 2. I was mainly bored, or chances are, irritated. I would probably rewatch Gotham before I would rewatch this.
Whoa. Spicy.
No.
But Gotham you could rewatch as like how did this happen? Arrow is like, please stop.
Because it's more, is it more mind-numbing?
I guess.
All right, question for you. Which was worse, Adrian Chase or Fish Mooney?
Ooh.
Adrian Chase. Adrian Chase was worse for me.
I'd agree with that, actually.
Yeah.
They're pretty equal for different reasons for me.
I would put them
For
in
me,
the same.
Adrian Chase is worse because he was randomly supposed to be Prometheus, who was an awesome Justice League villain, and they made him the most annoying, whiny guy in the world.
He really was.
Yeah, I would only give Fish like this much over Prometheus.
Uh-huh.
So 2 is where you're at.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
This is
different than anything.
It's like when Arrow was good, it was really good. Like the first 2 seasons, they were that good, and then it just tanked. I do feel like it ended slightly better. I think season 8 was better than 7, which was better than 6, which was better than 5, being the absolute low point. But because there were more bad seasons, and I just want to get through this and watch it as fast as I can, this is awful episodes. Yeah, 2.5 at the high end for me. It's pretty
Feels
low.
like a vlog.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it a 3.
Love goggles.
Yeah.
I don't care. He is wonderful to look at. I'm not going to rewatch it for him because
He shaved his head.
You still need to be realistic about the show.
right. So I'm not rewatching it. But
How could you give it a 3 and then say you're not rewatching it, though? That's more than halfway up the scale.
Yeah.
that is I kind of look at it as the middle point of the 5, the 1 through 5. So you have 1 and 2, and you have 4 and 5. And then
That's true. You don't really do halves.
Well, I mean, halves are allowed. I don't care that you do the halves, and I have done halves in the past. Normally 3.5 is the rating I give to a show where I see it's like the minimum rating that I will give to a show that I actually plan to stick with. This is not a 3.5. I can't say it's a 2.5 because I can't say that I was mainly bored. I do think there are things that I liked and I didn't like. Some of the things I really liked, some of the things I really didn't like, kind of like how you were describing Crisis, actually, most of you, is how I feel about Arrow. I don't hate the last season. I don't hate seasons 3 and 4. I do hate season 5. And seasons 6 and 7, I have lukewarm, mostly not good feelings. So I'm not at the place of saying 6 crap seasons like Kyle is saying, but I'm also not at the place of saying that I would tell people to watch this show. Unless they are already invested in the Arrowverse. That's kind of where I land with the 3. But
and even then I'd have a hard time because you're watching it so out of order it wouldn't really make any sense to go back and watch Arrow anyway.
There's that.
Krista
Okay.
knows all about watching shows out of order and how they don't work well.
There's no Marvel panel, so I guess he gets to transplant here.
She actually was so good. You went back and you rewatched it all in order, didn't
She
you?
watched the
I
DC
had-
shows in order.
I had the note, like, on my phone. I copied the air dates of which, like, I had, like, a spreadsheet at first of Arrow, then Flash, and Supergirl, and what the air dates were for each episode for all 3 shows, combined it into a master list, sent it to my phone, and I was checking it off.
It's some dense material.
So,
Yeah.
to the traditional joke, the Jessica Jones and Daredevil seasons to which Spencer obliquely referred were before these.
It was before these. I learned my lesson, and I did my homework.
You did, but, running joke.
But again, in my defense, I wasn't expecting to join a comic book podcast panel, so that's why I watched Jessica Jones first, because Daredevil wasn't a big interest to me either. I fixed it,
Isn't history wonderful?
right?
Hashtag disclaimer?
Yeah. If I have one, she definitely needs one to explain all that.
That's too long for a hashtag. You gotta keep it.
One time I watched a show out of order. One time.
Was the series
Later.
finale a proper send-off for the characters?
No,
Why or why not?
it was crap.
He deserved more. I I mean, if we're showing the dedication to him, and as you said, and as I said, and whoever else, he did start the Arrowverse, and regardless of even the fact that he, like I said, didn't develop to where we thought he was going to, he still deserved. And maybe Steven felt okay with it. I have no idea. I mean, it probably felt different to film it as being part of the cast and the crew, and I'm sure it's really hard to let those connections go. But at the end of the day, I still feel like he deserved more than what he got, because what he got was filler and setup. And
the other part of the problem there is that they put him in a position where he makes the ultimate sacrifice and he saves the world, and they give him the chance to be like the ultimate hero, but then they wrote it very poorly to the point where even in doing so he made a ton of mistakes and it was weakened at every turn.
Yeah, and it just followed too many other beats of other things that are recent on-screen adaptations instead of following its own path.
Especially like we got his big send-off in Crisis, and then we have to watch the really bad spin-off episode after that, which took away the momentum of it. And then the finale, which didn't do anything for
it purposefully followed beats of other. That time it was DC things, but it was still following beats of other things.
The show, he got a better send-off in Crisis than the show itself. And then if you're talking about a send-off for any of the other characters, I think they added more confusion. They didn't, I don't know. Roy lost his arm just to get a robot arm, and why? It had nothing to do with anything.
Because Arsenal has a robot arm in the comics in this awesome plot line. So they just had to hurry up and get him.
They just threw it in.
They just had to make him full Arsenal in the very last episode.
So again, it was another thing that they threw in, but if you don't have any context or anything, and that's something that is probably fan service, the fan service falls flat, and then the people who don't know what it is are like, well, why is this even happening?
Yeah, he didn't even use it for the show.
What I wish had happened is that instead of the end that we got of Crisis on Infinite Earths, they should have attached the last 20 minutes of this show to the Crisis part and made it all one episode and then just called it good on Arrow.
Fully agree.
Because I liked the funeral part. I didn't need any of the plot up until the funeral. I didn't need any of it. I didn't, William being kidnapped just as a plot device for them to all come back together. I didn't need any of that. All they had to do was the nice funeral, and that could have been tacked on somewhere for the other characters. Especially since they brought Barry and Kara to the funeral. They could have just done that in Crisis on Infinite Earths at the end. When they're quiet, I assume they agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think this show will hold up with the... We're in the looking back questions now, by the way. Do you think this show would hold up with the passage of time? Why or why not? Was it time for it to go? Would you have watched more seasons, or should it have ended sooner? I already know the answer to this, but you should say it.
It doesn't hold up to the passage of the present.
Yes. Word for word what I was going to say.
I would like to just point out how many times on these DC we actually talk about the true predecessor, which is Smallville. And except for, I think, Kristen, who hasn't seen it. And
there's another tradition.
Oh, really? Okay, so you two need to watch it. But
another tradition.
Okay, so the other four of us talk about it frequently because it stays with us. It is fulfilling. It's satisfying. Well acted. Well,
it does still have its issues towards the end.
Oh, it does. It's not flawless,
the
but
Supergirl season's not good.
What?
I think the Supergirl season of Smallville is not that good.
That was the writer's strike season.
I know.
And I still think that even that at its low point is still a lot better than most of Arrow. Sorry.
We go back, we watch Smallville all the time, and I actually enjoy it now more than when it was airing week to week.
Yeah, because still technically Supergirl was more accurate for that.
I wouldn't do that with this show. I don't have that connection to these characters by the end of it.
Yeah,
they lost me.
That's the gist. I like the way that Nick said that. He was being funny, but it's still accurate. And if a show is good, it stays with you. Smallville stayed with us. I will still always reference Arrow, but I probably won't go back and rewatch it the same.
So I'm assuming that you all believe it should have ended sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah. End of season 4, probably.
That was my next question. Do you all agree with that?
I agree, because at that point you realize he's never going to be the Green Arrow he should be. And they were already off the rails. They should have just came up with a more concise ending at that point.
Again, they must all agree.
I don't know.
Quarantine podcasting is hard.
No, I think that it should have ended earlier. I just can't pinpoint an exact point. Kyle's he tends to be like very all or nothing. And so I can see where he would land on that. I don't know if that's 100% for me, but I do think it should have ended sooner than it did.
Yeah.
Agreed.
We're running out of story ideas for quite a few seasons, so it should have ended earlier.
I think it should have.
That or they were kiboshed on good story ideas.
I feel like maybe, even though it would have given us the poor season 5, just the way I remember season 4 ending, I feel like season 6 probably would have been a more natural end for them. Not a great season, but at least that was before we got into Future Star City, which was season 7, and that to me was just completely unnecessary.
Yeah, I guess he kept talking about his 5 years on Lian Yu, so it was like each season we were getting flashbacks from another year.
And season 6
I
would have
wouldn't
been
have needed 5.
Oh, I was going to say season 6 would have been, this is the year without the flashbacks, and how does that, yeah.
And I still wouldn't need that much of it.
Nick has had it with Arrow.
Or the Warner Brothers, really. Like, I think after season 3 or 4, it was clear that they couldn't do the show that maybe they were set out to do.
Arrow, of course, was created by the Berlanti team, who's also created, in some variation, every other Arrowverse show. Berlanti has a long list of credits, including Everwood, Jack and Bobby, Eli Stone, Political Animals, The Tomorrow People, You on Netflix, and Titans on DC Universe. And then the other two with him have created Legends of Tomorrow. So individually or separately, does Arrow convince you to watch anything by them, past, present, or future?
No.
I mean, I love You. I never would have guessed it was made by them because it's so tonally different and the quality is so much better. But if somebody said, oh, the guys who made Arrow made this other show, watch it, I probably would have been like, now I don't want to watch it.
I think Berlanti's production company is involved with Prodigal Son on Fox, and that show's actually really good. But if it takes the same sort of arc that Arrow has, they start out with 2 really good seasons, and then it kind of just...
So his production company is involved, but he didn't come up with the idea for Prodigal Son, which is why it's not on the list.
Correct.
Because that's also true of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. It's his production company because he basically has full control over the television DC adaptations, and the Archie comics are currently folded under as a subsidiary right now for Warner Brothers and DC. So his production company is behind Riverdale and Sabrina, but he didn't actually create either of them.
I don't really know what to say. I don't always necessarily follow based on past things. I don't...
If a show looks good, we'll watch it.
Yeah, if a show looks good, we'll give it a chance. Like, because it can be totally different. I don't necessarily... I would still watch other things. I don't know if I would watch all of those things you just listed off. I have watched a couple of them and been pleased with it. But then, on the other hand, this one I wasn't. So it just depends on the show.
Yeah, same. It's the same answer I've had on other podcasts when this has been asked as well. I don't necessarily follow creators. I go with what shows look interesting.
Well,
Yeah, I wouldn't specifically follow a show because of a writer, or I might for an actor, but probably not because of one of the production team.
Yeah, more of the actors I would follow, yeah.
I persist with the question because here again, I said this on Gotham, and probably a few others. There are creators that I and others follow, which is why it's important. It's weird in this situation just because Berlanti does... I mean, he's one of the super producers right now for TV. He's got his hand in a lot of different projects, so it's kind of hard even to generalize. But like I said, if Joss Whedon created something today to be aired tomorrow, I'd sit down in front of the TV and watch it just because Joss Whedon has his name on it. That's just what I would do. But
So do you love Justice League, the movie?
I haven't seen it yet, but I do plan to. But I know
I'm
it's
saying
not
his
good.
reputation is quite tarnished.
And I know now. But movies are not really his medium. What I'm talking about is TV. And Buffy, Angel, Firefly, and Dollhouse have all earned their credit. And he also
It was really good with the first Avengers movie.
He did do that, and he also co-created Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I know none of you like, but I don't hate it.
That's not a selling point.
Doesn't matter, it is for me. That's for our Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. discussion, which none of them are on. Would you follow any of the individual actors from Arrow to a past or future TV project? I'm going to tell you right now, if Stephen Amell shows up, I am watching Stephen Amell.
Are you gonna watch his wrestling show?
I will give it a chance. I'll probably not like it, but he will be shirtless, and I will not care.
I intentionally watched the movie with him and his brother Robbie that is on Netflix.
Cousin.
Because it was
Robbie's a
Stephen.
cousin.
And yeah, I mean it's okay.
I watched it too, and yeah, it was just okay. I ended up.
It had a lot more potential that it felt like a script that wasn't fleshed out.
Mm-hmm. He's gonna end up being like typecast. I feel bad to say that, but I feel like that's what's gonna happen to him for a while.
If he's typecast shirtless, I'm there for it. So, hey, I'm consistent.
Girls can say that about male characters. We can't say that about female characters.
I mean, you can. Not the
Yeah, you
shirtless
can.
part.
No.
What female actress would you follow, Spencer?
From the Arrow cast.
No, you missed the point.
He meant the shirtless part. I got the point.
I still think you can.
I would say, as men, we would probably follow all of the females.
I'm thinking probably not, but standards.
What the hell just happened?
Off the rails.
Derailed.
So, would you follow, other than me and my Stephen Amell's Hearts, would you follow any of these actors to another project? Especially since some of you said, I don't follow creators, I follow actors. Now's the answer to that question.
No, the only one I'd follow is probably Stephen, and even then, to be honest, outside of Arrow, everything he's done has not been stellar.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And you gave Arrow 2.5 stars.
No, I'm not saying Arrow is stellar, but I've watched the things like played Casey Jones in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 9 or whatever the hell that was, and it wasn't good. And this one I just watched on Netflix, it wasn't that good. I mean, I like the guy, but he's not done anything fantastic. The Salmon Ladder doesn't count, Kylie.
It counts. Everything counts.
I mean,
you can just rewatch it in a GIF, man.
And I have.
I mean, I would be really happy if John Diggle Stewart showed up on the HBO Green Lantern show, but I doubt it. I feel like they're going to really keep those HBO DC shows separate. But it would be a fun Arrow Easter egg if he showed up, since it's about the entire Green Lantern Corps and all of them. It'd be a great little nod of the hat to have him in there somewhere.
He shows up at the very beginning, Lila double-crosses him again, and then they go on with the show.
I do tend to follow...
I was going to say, I'm not there for that. I don't need that.
No, but that was kind of their relationship. He kept trusting her, she kept screwing him over, and it didn't seem to matter.
Yeah, they did not have a healthy marriage by most stretches
Not
of
at
measurement. I had no emotional inclination toward their relationship at all, which is sad.
I mean, it actually annoyed me the number of times she did things that were very detrimental to his livelihood or the team that he was on or their relationship, and he never really seemed to be that upset by it.
Their relationship was terrible, like, because she would show up like a guest star in an episode, and like she'd be like, "Oh, this is what I was doing." I'm like, shouldn't he know that? He lives with you.
There was a lot of ham-fisted exposition a lot of times. So no one would follow anyone else?
I mean, I like John Barrowman. I follow him with things.
Oh, yeah.
I like...
John Barrowman.
What?
I said, oh, yeah, him. I'd follow him.
And Colin Donnell, I like him. I would...
He's currently on Chicago Med.
Yeah, I don't watch shows like that, but...
So you don't follow him?
At least not this time. Who else? Oh, the guy that is Dig. I mean, I already followed him from other shows that he was on.
David Ramsey, what did you watch him on?
He was on Dexter.
He was in Dexter and some other stuff. So I don't know. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I like the actors. I'm just not necessarily... It would... Yes, we did say it would more follow an actor, but in these cases, I still think it would depend on the project.
Yeah, I don't... It's more of a, oh, hey, they're from Arrow, than, oh, I should watch that because someone from Arrow was on it.
Yep. That's
Agree.
me too. I was going to say that exact same thing.
Which happened with Colton Haynes. I was like, oh, look, he's on American Horror Story. But I didn't seek him out because he was on it.
No, because you were already watching American Horror Story. In fact,
That's true.
that's one of our panels, and you're on it. You co-moderate it with me. So, well, this is just a lovely... So, in all the other episodes that we've ever done, at least in the past couple of years, so 2 episodes a year, there's been some reference to eulogizing Arrow. And since my inclination is that none of you are going to recommend Arrow unless it's Arrowverse completionism, am I right? Anybody want to correct?
Stop at 2, season 2.
You could actually stop at... Well, you got the Flash... When was the Flash crossover? Was that season 2?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, stop at season 2.
No, Flash versus Arrow was the season 3 crossover.
So
Because
there were still episodes where
Barry showed
there
up
were
in season 2.
Yeah, there were still
He
episode
does.
team up.
The Flash backdoor pilot was season 2 of Arrow. The Flash versus Arrow crossover was season 3 of Arrow and season 1 of The Flash.
So maybe watch the first 2 seasons and then only the crossovers after that.
Kristen comes out with the thing that you're all agreeing with, and she's been silent. Okay, so...
I don't know. I don't know who I could recommend it to. It would have to be somebody, completionism. Maybe they just out of morbid curiosity to see if what we're saying fits what their opinion is going to be. I don't know. I don't know any of my... I was like, really, if I can't even recommend it to you guys, how can I recommend it to somebody else? And initially I did recommend it to you guys, so it's very conflicting feelings.
So, since the references were made to eulogizing Arrow, and since none of the feelings are especially positive, what I'd like you to do is take some time to eulogize Arrow. You can be as short and sweet or as lengthy as you want, but I feel like you should say at least one nice thing about it.
Oh, nice thing.
At least one nice thing. God, try. And then we can wrap up our discussion of Arrow forever. Or at least, insofar as he doesn't come back somehow in later episodes of the other shows. Which I just don't put anything past them.
All right, I'll go first, and I'll say it was fun at the beginning. It became tedious, but it gave us some memories.
It was a compliment sandwich.
Say it was my 4th favorite version of Green Arrow. Out of 4.
Right, there's the footnote. I was going to ask, and how many versions are we talking? Okay. I don't think that was nice, though. Do you have
That's
one?
the nicest you're going to get.
Damn, you're not doing this.
Deathstroke.
Okay, that's good.
That was great.
There you go. I am proud of you, Kyle.
I
I could say
appreciate.
it wasn't the worst thing I ever watched.
That was the chips to the sandwich.
Gotta get a little side dish in there.
I will say I liked one of the things Arrow still did best. Yeah, the team-ups wouldn't have happened without Arrow. I will say that I like Oliver's one-on-one moments more with people, like his one-on-one moments with Barry, his one-on-one moments with Sarah. I feel like those were more fulfilling and satisfying than most of the other story arcs happening and narratives and all that jazz. I will say that what the show did well was still find that nice action and fight sequence beats to keep you intrigued. I will say the chemistry in the show was really good between not so much some of those later added characters, but, all those initial characters, like back when, his mom was still a part of the regular story and all of that jazz. I think they did a really good job of developing those relationships between the characters. But mostly all of that, like everyone has already said, is towards the beginning. And that's all I got.
That sounded really nice until your very last sentence.
Sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I tried.
No, I thought that was a very good try. It just had, that kind of aftertaste.
I didn't know how to finish. I mean, at the end of the day, it still finished the way it finished, so.
To the Arrow. You kicked off the Arrowverse and John Barrowman was fun.
Fair enough.
We love John Barrowman.
Maybe the actor that played Tommy Merlin had time traveled to the end of season 8, seen what it was going to be, and asked to be killed off at the beginning.
No.
Arrow, you started strong, but the more shows you spun off, the more you began to spin out until you finally crashed and burned.
Wow, hers is writer flair.
Yeah, time to think about it.
I had it in my head.
Well, I will say that I was reluctant to watch this show, was talked into it, and
I said I did.
I know. Enjoyed it for what it was. I don't regret watching it, but I will never watch it again. And Stephen Amell, if you're out there, may a better project come along that suits your particular talents and muscles and general visage.
He's a nice guy. Stephen Amell in real life.
He's a very nice person. I've met him. He's very nice.
The fight choreography on this show is really, really good, too. I will add that. I mean, I think they did well by that all 8 seasons. But, you know, that's not the story, so sadly it didn't go much further than that. Anything else you want to say about Arrow Season 8 or Arrow in general now that all 8 seasons are finished?
They brought Rags back.
Oh, they did, yeah.
Ragman.
Whatever.
Clamoring for.
Well, very forgettable season.
I know. Kyle just said he was sort of buried, and he said the one character we were all clamoring for. And I was okay not to. I don't know why they brought him back. He was on for a half season years ago. So
spin-off, I think.
They like to regurgitate, like I said.
Not a very interesting character out of the barrels of DC Comics. Just saying. Anything else?
No, I think we've summarized those last few episodes pretty well.
Okay. Well, since Hillary likes to do that. Hillary summarized the summary. What I'd like to do is thank Kristen, Nick, Hillary, Kyle, and Spencer for joining me once again to talk about Arrow. And this is our last Arrow discussion. But it's not our last discussion of the DCTU series panel because they have 5 other shows to talk about again. What with the introduction of Batwoman, and now we're catching up on Black Lightning. But before we get to all that, it's now time to roll the credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kelsey Rezmer. Kelsey played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole kit and caboodle was engineered and produced by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Give us stars, give us comments, give us reviews. Let us know how we're doing. Send us a message. We might just read it on the podcast. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what we should keep, what we should toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions on shows we might consider, contact us at our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, where we have a guest book, via email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, or via our social media, Facebook, Twitter at CPU Podcast, and Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite. Though, of course, we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time. We always have several more new episodes coming down the pike. Just listen to our intros. And if you miss old episodes or want to know in general what we cover, just find us. We are everywhere and searchable wherever you look for things on the internet. You can search for us, or you can subscribe at our website, our channels, our social media accounts. Stay up on our new events and episodes. Until the next time, Arrow is available in its entirety on Netflix because the CW has a contract with them, even though we don't. In the meantime, our DCTU panel will next reconvene during the summer months to start catching up on Black Lightning, which, with Crisis on Infinite Earths, was added to the Arrowverse and will therefore now be included as part of our ongoing DCTU series. So until next time, until next episode, new episodes are published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned!
Bye.